and then to and from on the subway or whatever that thing's called in London. If she wasn't with us, you, me, Jay, all of us, Amy, all of us would have been dead. Especially the rickshaw race from Piccadilly Circus back to the hotel, where clearly we won, and Coupler. Yep. Oh God.
We did. Yeah, they were getting out. They were pushing us.
Watching them go sideways, or watching you guys go sideways.
Oh, Brad, your fur baby's adorable.
What? Look at that.
Oh my goodness. So cute. If you don't have your, I don't know if you see gallery view, but there's some fur babies on here.
This is Bucko.
So yes, my other nickname, well, not very many nicknames, was London Mom. So if you need a London chaperone, if you pay my way, I'll go with you.
Seriously, thanks for the drink. Either way.
All right, so we have a few more people still coming in. If you want to say hello to anybody, please go ahead and do so. It's exciting to see some people that we haven't been on here before. So Nick and Peggy, this is your first one in a while, so welcome back, guys. And I think you're out of state too. You traveled.
We're in Indianapolis in a hotel.
Right, that's right.
There we go.
We brought our samples.
Love it.
Want a Kit Kat, Yolanda?
Exciting. So if you want to go ahead and mute yourself, that way it'll be easy for everybody to hear our presenter tonight. And then if you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have. If you don't feel comfortable speaking up like that, please use the chat and we'll be monitoring that throughout the meeting. All right, so I think we have a few more people that are going to be joining us here. Sorry, it's hard to like admit people and multitask. Okay, so really quickly, we have a couple things to talk about as far as Missouri Whiskey Society. First, welcome to our October virtual tasting featuring WhistlePig. I personally am super excited about this because I've loved WhistlePig since Doug Nixon introduced it to us years ago. So it's been a while since we've had them in front of you guys. So thanks guys for being here tonight. But we are going to be doing a November Missouri Whiskey Society meeting, which we usually don't do because there's whiskey in the winter in November. And it tends to be a lot of activities. We host special events during that month. And obviously Whiskey in the Winter has been canceled and postponed. So we are going to do our third Wednesday of the month. We don't have a brand confirmed yet. We were working with Dana on that. So hopefully we will get that nailed down this week. And we also, I'm sure you guys have seen in some of the email correspondence and those that you picked up a kit, we have relaunched Women in Whiskey. And we started our first Women in Whiskey 2.0 event in October. Oh, there you go. Thanks for showing that off, Brad. And Amy's going to take a moment to talk to you guys about our event that's coming up and our special membership that's happening with Women in Whiskey that I'm going to stop talking and let Amy just take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Gamlin, and I'm the founder of Women in Whiskey, and I'm super excited to relaunch this. So if you, I know there's some women on here, so if you're not part of it, we welcome you to join. But if the men on here, if you know women that do enjoy whiskey, or maybe your significant other, you'd like to get them to start liking whiskey, this would be a great social for them to get involved. When we started Gamlin Whiskey House, I was not a whiskey drinker. And because of this organization, this event, I have now become a whiskey drinker and can learn to appreciate it. So it's a great social club. We're relaunching it. We are going to start kind of doing Zoom meetings, Zoom tastings, just like this, always on the first Wednesday of every month. We're also going to start doing some in-person things as well, keeping it smaller, to go along with social distancing. So depending on where we have them, we'll determine how many tickets we sell. But it is a yearly membership as opposed to Whiskey Society, which is monthly. So for the month of October, it is discounted. It's $75 for the year, and then it goes up to $99 on November 1st. So what that gets you, it gets you access to the once a month Zooms. It gets you access to purchase the tickets to go to the in-person events. We are giving a welcome gift, which is, it's a leather stamped, basically like a recipe card holder. So we will also do the, like the tasting kits that you all are doing for our monthly, for the first week, the Zoom tastings. And everyone will come with a recipe card for a very approachable drink cocktail. So that recipe card could be saved for events and things like that. We had an amazing one last month for September, I guess it was October. And it was really great. So you can attach all of those recipes in this keychain holder and keep them. But we're really looking forward to this. November's is going to be, the theme will change. So November, we're actually going to get pedicures. So we'll go to a salon in Edwardsville, Illinois. We're going to get pedicures. We're going to do the tasting. So if you're not actually in the event or at the event, you can still tune in to the Zoom tasting. We'll do it live from whatever location we're doing. So it'll be pedicures. We're going to have some small bites. We're going to have the tasting and then hang out a little bit afterwards. So I feel like we're all missing that social piece to it. So this is really exciting to be able to bring it back a little bit in smaller portions and then, eventually open it up a little bit more. So hopefully tomorrow tickets will launch to that. So if you are a member, you'll get first dibs on those tickets every month. And then of course, if anybody's tuning in out of state, they could just tune into the Zoom every month. So really looking forward to it. Of course, we're going to have some gear and all that kind of stuff. But again, it is $75 until the end of the month, and then it will go up in November.
Yeah, and we have a couple ladies on here that are members. So if you guys want to wave your hand and let us know which ones you are. Yay, exciting.
And you can get tickets, our website, it's womenwhiskey.com. And we have a Facebook page. If you're not part of the Facebook page, definitely find us and follow it. And then we also have the link in there as well.
Yep, and I just
Hey,
posted it in the chat.
Also, can I interject a comment there? Remember, guys, the more they drink, the better we look.
Very true. And what's another thing that's kind of unique about the tasting is that you're actually going to do the tasting while you're getting a pedicure. It's not separate. So, it's kind of nice that, you sit down in a nice distanced area and have a nice tasting and people talking while you're getting a pedicure. It's going to be pretty funny and pretty cool.
Yeah. And every month will change. So we have, different things in mind. We have, I have a cake pop business. So we're talking about maybe doing like a cake pop class or like a stave painting class or a different kind of cooking class, a cookie exchange, different things that are just fun and out of the box and just to do alongside. So we'll start with that. We'll do the tasting and then just enjoy each other's company.
Excellent.
So share it with anyone that likes whiskey.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And then we also have Missouri Whiskey Society Select members. So wave if you're a Select member. I know a few of you are in here. So one of the great benefits about the Select membership is that we do a bottle raffle every month. And so last month was our first one. Leslie Pinn won an Eagle Rare. And John, where's John on here? I thought he would be joining us. I think he's somewhere. Oh, there you are. John, he got a bottle of Still 630. I forget which version of that. You could win again. You might be another lucky winner tonight. So Select members, what we have available for raffle is WhistlePig tenure. Thank you for that contribution from the WhistlePig team. And we have also a Glenmorangie Quintessa Scotch. So that's delicious. Whoever wins those must share with me. Those are like some of my two favorite things. Excellent. Excellent. So at the end of this meeting, we will have Doug from WhistlePig pick a number and we'll get the winners from him. So without further ado, our special guest tonight is Doug Ward from WhistlePig, and we are so excited to have you here tonight. And I'll let you introduce your team who's on the Zoom with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. And thank you, everybody, for joining. It's obviously fun and interesting times in the world. And whether you're in Missouri or Texas like me, or fake Vermont like the virtual background behind me, it's a weird world out there. So these are just, unique memories that I think we're all going to look back on from years to come and remember maybe the first time you had one of these whiskeys, or the first time you heard a lot more of a deep dive about WhistlePig. And for somebody like me that normally travels the country and does this for a living, this is my moment. This is my time to kind of enter, whether you're in a hotel in Indianapolis, right, like Victor and his wife, or you're sitting at home and muted out like Mr. Nixon from Major Brands, that's been influential in setting this up, along with Mr. John Andrews, who is our steward of the brand, based in Chicagoland area, but also covers Missouri. So thank you all for joining and supporting, and John, hearing more of what you already know. And Doug, maybe I can throw something your way maybe you haven't heard before. But at the end of the day, that's probably hard to get past you, as we've worked together for quite some time now. So without further ado, I want to dive a little bit into a little bit of what I call, WhistlePig 101, the history of our brand. Of course, we have 3 fantastic whiskeys for us to have in front of us tonight and taste through. And we will be going in sequential order from age statement, from Piggyback being our 6th year into our 10 year, which is what we started the brand with. And then probably one of my personal favorites in the entire lineup, doesn't matter the cost, doesn't matter the age, 12 year, right? To finish everything off with. But to give everybody some of the baseline, and before we get started, as Elizabeth said, put anything you might have in the chat. If you want to interrupt me, that's fine. I have ADD, like probably most all of you. So I might get a little bit off track, but at the same time, I'll probably be able to find my way back. But we can probably moderate the Q&A, and I will make sure that we have at least 10 or 15 minutes on the back end, if not more, for all the questions, because that's really when these tastings become more fun and interactive, because there might be something that you've always wanted to ask about rye, whiskey, our brand, and never had the chance to ask before. Maybe it's how much gray Doug Nixon had in his beard pre-COVID. I don't know. Maybe you want to know that. So, but WhistlePig started in 2007 when we bought a farm in Vermont. It's a 500-acre dairy farm that was defunct. And what you see behind me is actually what the barn looked like, right, before we made it into a first-class distillery. And WhistlePig's always been steeped on innovation. So what it really turns into is Dave Pickerell was the master distiller at Maker's Mark for 14 years. And he had taken them from 75,000 cases to 1.4 million. He had seen what happened in the 80s with regards to brown spirits and really just the glutton of whiskey that was out there. And there really wasn't, this was when vodka was hitting stride, if any of you remember this, right? And it's really only until about 2 or 3 years ago that whiskey overtook vodka sales. Well, Dave being Dave, he saw this resurgence of brown spirits. He saw bourbon coming back online, and he truly, truly believed in rye was going to be the next category within whiskey that was going to take flight. He's a historian. I used present tense. I still do that. Dave passed away in November of 18. Unfortunately, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about Piggyback. But keep in mind, he was my mentor, and I still sometimes talk to him in the first person. Dave left Maker's Mark after 14 years because he wanted to travel the world to see every place that made rye whiskey, because he had never done that before. And what he stumbled upon was some flavoring whiskey, or what would have been turned into flavoring whiskey, that we basically rescued from Alberta, Canada, and brought to our farm in Vermont, and is actually what you have in front of you. That is our 10 year, right? Like I said before, we're going to start the tasting and talk about the 6 year first, but we have to start with our story, and the story starts with our 10 year, because really at that time, 10 years ago, there was nothing on a shelf that was even remotely close to what we launched with regards to our 10 year. And the people in Canada that we bought our first barrels from thought we were the craziest people on earth, that we were literally going to take this flavoring whiskey that would have been used for Crown Royal or Canadian Club at maybe 2, 3, 5% as a flavoring agent, because of the depth of flavor, and take it to Vermont. Wait a minute, you're going to take this to Vermont, you're going to bottle it with an age statement and 100 proof and charge people $75 for it? You've lost your mind. And so really that was step one, right? And so what happened after that really is round and round of funding to make sure that we cornered this market, right? And the cool thing about, and the thing that makes us proud and happy to know, and I'm sure John's gotten this question and Doug has as well, is, you know, what's your competition? Well, within American whiskey and within the rye category in America, there's really no one else that has age statement rye that we have. Whether you're talking about our Piggyback, that 6-year, our 10-year that we started our company with, 12-year, that's once again something that we'll end with, that is one of my personal favorites, 15-year, 18-year Boss Hog, and also farm stock. There's not one brand that personally holds more rye whiskey in the world outside of the MGPs and the Alberta distillers more than we do. And that comes with rounds of funding, and that comes with a lot of foresight and just really looking at the future and knowing that we do not want another competitor to jump up and really rival us. And there's really, I think, no one else that will be able to do that, right? So it really was steeped on innovation of taking something from Alberta that was sourced, bringing it to Vermont to start this brand. And, you know, it always and forever was to be the goal of being a grain to bottle distillery, right? So as Dave used to always say, being the high pig at the trough, we want to always be pushing the envelope. We want to always be doing something that people are going to replicate. And I'm sure that most of you go to a liquor store or watch on social media, and there's a lot of people finishing casks with different things. And, you know, when we talk about 12-year, we're going to talk about the fact that we were really the first ones in American whiskey to play around with Sauterne and Madeira and a bunch of other things. And now, you know, the Boss Hog series has turned into, okay, we did this with Calvados, we did this with Hogshead Recharred. We had the, you know, this one is the release that should be, and Doug can probably tell you when it's going to land, or John can. I don't see these emails anymore. But that the next edition of Boss Hog 7 is the first ever double finished Boss Hog that's ever been released, and the oldest at 17-year age statement, right? So to kind of, you know, put it all roundabout, the grain to bottle distillery is what we'll talk about when we talk about farm stock and home stock. But the key thing, and we can start talking because it's a lot more fun, you know, on these when you're drinking alongside and not just hearing me and my beard go up and down about whiskey. But grab your Piggyback right now and let's start diving into the whiskey itself, because we're really excited, more importantly, to talk about Piggyback. Obviously, 10 years, what we started the company with, it's the bread and butter. It's the quintessential rye. It's really what changed the game. And if you remember 10 years ago going to a liquor store, there might have been 4 or 5 ryes on a shelf. Now it has its own area of the liquor store. There's literally back bars that are filled with different ryes because the category is on fire. And I know that we had a little bit to do with that, but the key thing is that the ultra premium category is anything $75 or more. And it doesn't matter what quarter of what year we look at these numbers, we own the category that we created with the 10-year, right? And that is anything 75 and more. We own about 66%. I mean, I was on a happy hour with our VP of sales and strategy on Monday night, and he said, well, I think it's 67 now, but we can go with 66 because that was the last report we got. But case in point, 50% plus from conception of our brand have we owned that ultra premium. Piggyback is that $40 to $50 price point that literally is going to be there. That's going to be the mainstay. It's literally for bartenders, now home bartenders, right? Derek was pouring himself a beer earlier and it made me just salivate because I can't wait for somebody to pour me a drink. I have not been to a bar since my last business trip, which was literally the last week of February. But at the same time, Piggyback is really a game changer for us and for our brand. And the story goes as this, right? We launched with 10-year. We did after that go to 12-year, 15-year, 18-year, Boss Hogs intermittently, farm stocks, and now home stock in the middle of our COVID shutdown. But the big thing that Dave, when he left Maker's Mark, he wanted to do was have an everyday age statement, 100% rye at a high proof, because that's literally what his dream was always about. And so what you have with Piggyback is 100% rye, aged a minimum of 6 years, and bottled at 96.56 proof, right? So it is in that price point. It is in that flavor profile for you to use into cocktails. I mean, it's playful also. It's for the first time in the history of WhistlePig, can we say we have a whiskey that, hey, it could be a beer and a shot. It could be a shift shot at a bar. It can be playful. As Derek was pouring a Budweiser, I'm like, man, honestly, a High Life in 10-year, High Life and Piggyback, that's what I enjoy. That's my Boilermaker. That's my go-to. I think the less foo-foo, if you will, or craft style of beer, the better the pairing is with the rye. Let the rye shine. Let the whiskey do its job, right? But you just want something that's fun and different and maybe soft. Maybe it's got a little bit of sweetness to it to complement the rye spice, the complexity that you're always going to get with a WhistlePig product, and an age statement, 100% rye at a high proof. As we all know, we're in a whiskey group, right? Proof delivers flavor. So 96.56 is a little bit of an homage to Dave's birth year. So Dave was pretty much a young man when he passed, and he was born in 56. We were sitting in a meeting years ago and developing the labels and whatnot, and I brought up, hey, can we put 0.56 as an homage to Dave? And well, I guess TTB didn't know anything better of why we would do that. So they, of course, approved it, which I love. But more importantly, the 0.56 is really an homage to Dave. If you have ever seen a label of Piggyback, and I'm going to have to shut my fake background that I'm not in Vermont, and I'm actually in Dallas, Texas. Look, Derek's got one for you. So I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to show you that I'm sitting in my my living room, so I can show you the label as well. So if you look at the label right here, you'll notice on this right here, on every other bottle of WhistlePig, you'll see what Winston Churchill would look like as a pig, right? So luckily with COVID and everything, we had a new label update, and he stopped smoking. But the so he's safe, right? I mean, he's safe to be around, 6 feet or closer. But that is top hat, bow tie, used to have a cigar. But if you look at Piggyback, that's Dave. Dave was always in a Stetson. I'm always pretty much in a flat bill if you see me in person. The proof right there at 96.56. Dave on the front right there. Year of birth and year of death on the neck. And then more importantly, a nice little quote from Dave on the back. So now I'm going to switch over and we're going to go to the future. We were in the past, and now you've got what the distillery currently looks like on our farm in Vermont. So when you look at the category of rye as a whole right now, this is literally the game changer for our brand, based on the fact that really there's nothing that has those three components that I mentioned. 6-year aged, 100% rye at 96.56 proof. There might be something in that proof range, but it's not going to have 100% rye. There might be 100% rye, but it's not going to have 6-year aged and that high of a proof. So therefore, we redesigned the bottle. We have it to where you can hold it in your hand. It goes into a well. You can put a pour spout on top of it, which obviously has been a big, gripe. I'm sure Doug's heard and John's heard in the past. So that's really why we reworked the bottle. You can also see that the shoulders we kept the same, the WP through the back, all the branding's there, so that you know it is a WhistlePig product. But it is there to really bring people to our brand, to introduce them to our brand, and then maybe they're curious enough at some point in time to climb the ladder and look to see what other whiskeys are in our portfolio. So I find that this is a very drinkable, neat, very great in cocktails. My cocktail right now that I just continue to drink during COVID and while we're in quarantine is a Old Pal. If you're not familiar with an Old Pal, it's a really simple old classic cocktail. It's very much like a Boulevardier. Same components, except for instead of the Rosso, the red vermouth, you have a white dry vermouth, right? So you literally have Piggyback, right? Campari and dry vermouth. So it's, I like a higher spirit. So I use a 1.5 ounce pour of Piggyback, and then 3/4 of an ounce of Campari and 3/4 of an ounce of dry vermouth. And I like to garnish it with a lemon because I like the zestiness of it. but you know, to each their own. Most Bouvardiers are with an orange to bring out some more of the sweetness of it. But and the only thing I'll say, and I'm not going to get off on a tangent, but please keep your vermouth in the fridge. It is a wine, and we do not want it to spoil or go bad. And you go, this is a terrible cocktail that I made myself. And it wasn't you, and it's not the whiskey. It's literally just the vermouth's kind of turned and got a little weird, right? So that's Piggyback. And we'll touch a little bit more upon that, or we'll answer questions that you have about that whiskey in our lineup if you do. But let's go to 10-year, because I feel there's so much.
Okay. Well, I'm curious, why such the high proof? I mean, I like that it's high proof, but what was the reasoning for such high proof?
So first and foremost, we're always going to do our best to raise the proof and keep it as high as possible. When you're using rye whiskey in cocktails, we really want it to be something that's going to stand up. If you try to put 10-year at 100 proof into a cocktail, you got to have a hard time hiding that flavor profile. So with cocktail whiskey, you want the high proof, you want that complexity. Proof delivers flavor. So therefore, if we were to do something where we made it 86 or 90, it's not going to deliver the bang for the buck that we want it to. And there was really nothing out on the marketplace that was going to be able to offer those three things. And so therefore, and truth be told, Dana, Dave wanted it above 100. That's how much he wanted a high proof of this whiskey. And we locked in on the 96 way beforehand, because at the end of the day, we have the lineage with the 10-year and the 100 proof, and we didn't want to kind of muddy the waters with anything that was going to be the exact same proof. And we do have our barrel programs with 10-year, so we wanted to go as high as we could without kind of getting to that 100 range. Does that answer your question? We're going to do hand signals from here on out. It's good when everybody's on mute. So going into 10-year, right? Once again, it's the whiskey that really started our company. When I started selling the brand in 13. I came on full time in 14. So I've been selling it for 7, almost 8 years. You know, this was the quintessential rye. This is what started the company. When I started, this is all I went out to sell. And I remember going to every account and explaining to people what an age statement meant, right? Why mash bill matters, that proof delivers flavor, and all the things, right? Because at the end of the day, we're launching not only a whiskey, not only a rye whiskey, but we're launching a category within whiskey. So I don't know how many times I've compared and put 10-year up against any other rye whiskey that they may have had at their bar or restaurant to say, well, that's fine. If you don't believe me, I'm going to pour some of this 10-year into this glass. I want you to turn your back and give me a bottle of one of your favorite ryes, and I'm going to pour it to a glass. Then I'm going to do this whole thing. And then you tell me which one you like. And 110% every time people were like, that's the one I like. I go, well, that's what I'm here to sell you. So at the end of the day, it's a special whiskey in the entire lineup. All jokes aside, yes, it does pay our salary. It's about 56% of what we do, right? And we have a barrel program with it as well. If you're ever out in the retail and you see anything like one of these stickers right here on the shoulder, right? What this will signify is that it was a single barrel. This is obviously a 12-year single finish, which is what I'm sipping on tonight. But the side stamp on the 10-year, 12-year, and 15-year are basically going to tell you when you're there that it was a single bottle or a single barrel of 10-year, meaning that someone selected this at this proof and bottled it at that proof. And then 132 bottles, once those were bottled, the rest went into the 10-year, and it was one of 50 barrels that got proofed down to 100, which is all we're drinking tonight. So if you're interested in the barrel program, you can reach out to myself. I put my email in the chat. Also, Mr. John and Mr. Doug are the facilitators of the samples for the barrels. They can help you out, but I can also walk you along if anybody's interested, whether it's personal, the group, maybe, I don't know, or we sell a lot of these to companies as well for Christmas gifts. We might be past that right now, but you can always kind of keep those things in mind and keep those things in the hopper. So it's 132 bottles when we do a single barrel of 10-year. And anything else that we do. It's 132 bottles, whether it's a 12-year or a 15-year. And just to tease a little bit, we will have an 18-year barrel program next year. I don't know if we can even say how many we'll have, and it will be probably a super ultra, I don't even know the words, premium, right? You know, I'm sure Doug's getting excited just hearing me say those things, but it's going to be pretty silly, but it's going to be really, really cool, right? So that's 10-year, pretty much in a nutshell. You know, like I said before, I want to leave a lot of looseness on the back for any questions that anybody might have regarding any of the whiskeys that we're talking and tasting about. But just think this, with 10-year, when you're tasting it, you know, you're supposed to get exactly what rye whiskey in our mind should taste like. And Dave says that, you know, you're going to have all this rye spice, all this baking spice right in the front. But the thing about 10-year that makes it so incredibly unique is that caramel on the back. It's as he used to always say, it's as long as your zip code, right? So it is a beautiful length of that whiskey. And what makes it different and fun is that, you know, like I said before, with Piggyback, I feel like I can just sit around and have a little glass of it and have a beer and kind of have a shot and drink. With 10-year, and you know you're drinking serious whiskey at that point. And whether you like it with 2 cubes, 1 cube, I get this question all the time. It's like, how do you like it? Well, however you like to drink it, right? I love telling the story, and it's a good one, but it kind of still hurts a little bit as we roll into 12-year. My dad loves 12-year, and I remember about 2 years ago, he looked at me and he goes, you know what? It's really good with a little splash of Dr. Pepper. And, you know, I just paused and I was like, Dad, you can drink it however you want, but you don't have to tell me, you know? So maybe that's the greatest, you know, transition into talking about 12-year. So like I said before, when we started WhistlePig, it was really based on the 10-year and that model. We had some one-offs of Boss Hog that started, but more importantly, it took 3+ years to develop our next readily available whiskey in our lineup, and that is our 12-year. And what makes 12 years so incredibly unique, and once again pushing the innovation piece with regards to us being who we are, and I know I alluded to it earlier, is the fact that no one was really playing with different finishes of casks at that time. Well, Dave always used to resort back to talking about a finish. I think some whiskey brand did a Sonoma-Cutrer, like Chardonnay finished something, and it tanked and it was horrible. And he's like, what we're going to do is going to be so impactful and so cool and so delicious that we got to be first, so that when people look at what people are doing and they taste ours, this is what they're going to judge it against, right? And so what you have with 12-year is a individually finished Sauterne, Madeira, and port, right? And what you've got is 30% Sauterne, 63% Madeira, and 7% port. It's bottled at 86 proof. And the only reason that we went that low with the proof is really because we went older with the age, but more importantly, we wanted to make sure that every nuance in these barrels that you get, you're going to understand and you're going to get on your palate. So when I'm drinking 12-year, I get a ton of the residual sugar. Maybe it's tropical fruit or banana peel anywhere in the front or in the mid palate. That's from the Sauterne finish, right? Then the Madeira at 63% pairs so incredibly well with the rye spice and the blue fruits that come out of the Madeira. That's why it's the 63%, and it's at that percentage of the blend. And then the port's that inky structure backbone that's there. And honestly, it's at 7%. If it was 10% or more, you would literally get so much of that flavor that it would really overpower and mute some of those other notes that I just mentioned, which some people love, right? And some people don't. But at the end of the day, that's really what it's there for. Sometimes certain days on 12-year, I get a ton of this black tea, and I think that's a really good Madeira plus port. I think it's the port really shining through to give that black tea note to it. But it's always towards the finish and always towards the back, and it's always on certain days. But at the end of the day, it is the quintessential, probably most proud whiskey that Dave was ever involved in. when I got that phone call that fateful day in November, coming up literally almost on the anniversary of 2 years from now, that's what I grabbed, and that's what I found the bottom of that night. I can say that in public, right? Even if this goes on YouTube. Okay. I had friends, I had people helping me, I promise. But at 86 proof and those individual finishes, it's a soft, elegant sipping. It's the one whiskey in the entire lineup. I feel like whenever I used to be at bars and restaurants and a bartender was like, oh, let me make you a cocktail. What should I use? Or can I use this? I'd always kind of steer them away from, please don't use 12 year. It's perfect right the way it is, right? So just to kind of add a little extra color and as I say, sprinkles on the top of 12 year. Like I mentioned before, we have a bespoke program. So you actually have the ability, if you'd like to buy 132 bottles of it, to blend your own. So you can actually, you have to have lines that you walk within. We can't have you give 100% port or so on and so forth. But there are some ranges that you can play within. So you can get a master cylinder and you get 100 mLs and you get to play around and you literally get to play Master Blender of WhistlePig. So it's a really cool, fun program. 2 years ago, we launched our single finish program. And like I said before, that's actually what I'm enjoying tonight. So this is one that I sold in February. It was the last trip and the only trip to the farm that I got to go on. And it is a Spanish vermouth. So instead of it seeing the Sauterne, the Madeira, and the port, it doesn't see any of that. We take the same juice that we would have put into those casks and we put them into experimental casks. So we've got all sorts of different stuff that we're playing around with. It might be things that we're playing around with to experiment for the next boss hog. But more importantly, we've got Chablis, we've got Amarone, we've got Chardonnay, you name it, you know, Exo Cognac. We're playing with it. We've got them. They rotate, right? So at different times, and to the pain of Mr. Nixon at the distributor level and John who has to request them, they're always ever moving and they're hard to get off the farm. So when you ever do get one of these single finishes, it's like, yeah, this is the one I want. Please, 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 please let me have that one. It is absolutely delicious and it brings so much different nuances and character to the whiskey when you have a single finish, whether it's, you know, like I said, the Exo Cognac or a Peruvian rum that's going to have more sugar like the Sauterne would, or if you want more earth notes like this vermouth is just absolutely gorgeous. So if you see one of those side stamps on a bottle, you love the 12 year, I say roll the dice. And once again, the Mr. Johns and Mr. Dougs can probably steer you in the directions of if any of those are landing in the state of Missouri within, you know, the next couple of months or indefinitely as we continue to sell some of these out of our program, right? So before I move on to 15 year and some other things that we don't have in front of us, I wanted to see if there was any questions right now about the three whiskeys that we've basically kind of walked through right now.
Hey, Doug, where do you get your barrels from?
So the barrels that are new fill, that our distillery is filling, we have two types of barrels, but they're both Vermont oak barrels. So it's actually Vermont oak from our area. Right? Okay. And that's what gets sent off to ISC that's actually in Missouri. One of the coolest experiences that we ever got to go to. Dave and I flew in late night and we had a company excursion and we went down to the mill and then had dinner and went to the cooperage at ISC, Independent Stave Companies, who makes our barrels. And they're the largest cooperage in the world. So they've got them from Napa to Barossa in Australia to Bordeaux, but their family is based in Missouri and they've got them in Ohio, Missouri, and a lot of the wood and oak and white oak that they use is actually coming from Missouri, Arkansas, and Ohio, and a lot of that region, right? So to answer your question even further, Brian, think of it this way. Everything outside of farm stock and home stock and all those other things, we've purchased and sourced. So those barrels are coming as white, heavy charred American oak, and we're buying it, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, and we have stocks of things that are 20 years plus, right?
Great, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions before I move into the next whiskey, 15 year?
Oh, we don't have the 15. That's all we have.
Well, I was just going to talk about it.
Oh, I'm
since we're here.
sorry. I was like, I
have
actually do have a quick question. So you have the 500 acres, and I read on your website that you obviously have animals and you're growing crops, but you have bees and maple trees. And can you talk about how do you utilize honey and maple into some of the things that you do there?
So we don't have any honey. We do have an apiary, but we just really don't do much with it. It was if you're familiar with the really only other distillery that's out of Vermont is Bar Hill, and they make vodka, and they also make a couple other spirits and gin, and it's all steeped from honey. So they're they are the bee people, right? So we give them some pigs. They come over and give us an apiary, but for the most part, the big feature and cool thing that we can talk about is the maple program at the farm, because we do have a ton of maple trees. The think of it this way, and this is kind of a good parlay into 15-year. And once again, Brian's question about oak in general is that there's a ton of trees in Vermont. I mean, you can see in the picture just behind me, but there's only 4% that are white oak. Most of them are maple trees, right? And so we have sugaring that normally is around March, and we have the maple that runs and we cook off. We actually put into our used rye barrels, and we've always used it for cocktails, and we've always used it for bars and restaurants to, okay, you're going to put a cocktail on the menu. Here's some syrup to kind of go along with it to help support that in a point of sale type of thing. And I'm sure Doug can tell you all the stories about having to deliver syrup to an account in the middle of O&D and how much he loves being a syrup delivery guy. But at the end of the day, it's syrup that, like, if you don't like it, you probably don't like syrup. It's literally single farm grade A Vermont syrup finished in rye barrels, right? Now I will tell you this: we did start selling the syrup, and it's available, I believe, for sale on our website, along with some glassware and some other things. But right now we have transitioned into using some of the syrup to actually develop a program. Once again, the bars and restaurants are how most of you probably got introduced. If not, you have a really cool friend like Derek that has all his bottles behind him at his house and says, hey, try this. But the big picture is that bars and restaurants are really what introduced people to WhistlePig. So in the middle of this pandemic and us being a small, agile company, we had the opportunity to develop something called a ready-to-drink cocktail that comes in a 375. And the base for that cocktail is actually the maple syrup from our farm. And with some flavoring agent, we've come out with an orange old fashioned and a ginger old fashioned, but the maple is the sugaring agent in the old fashioned. So if you've ever had a maple old fashioned, I don't have to explain anything to you. It is absolutely delicious. But that is really the utilization of the maple on the farm right now, and probably moving forward, except for the fact that we did all cry and moan and gripe for the past month or so about syrup, because we knew we needed it for some gifting for the holidays, and we all just got a case sent to our house this week. So I'm stocked up personally, but no one obviously knows where I live. They think I'm at a virtual distillery in Vermont, right? So I'm safe.
Hey, John, can you hook our brother up?
Yeah, I did have one question as well. You talk about adding water to whiskeys, and these three, to me, they're great without adding any water at all, or even just one cube is what I like to do. I like to have a few sips and then add a cube just to see how that whiskey transforms in your mouth after that water is added to it. To me, which ones of these would you add water to and which would you not? Banana bomb, which is a 12-year. To me, I get a lot of banana, and then when I add water to it, it just totally changes it. So I don't know if that's good or bad or what.
It's good if that's what you want to do. At the end of the day, I feel like you can add water, you can add ice, you can use them in a cocktail, however you'd like. Kind of resort back to my joke about my dad and the Dr. Pepper. But I mean, realistically, I feel if I was to add water to one of these three that we're trying today, it would probably be the 10-year, just because it has so many layers to it. And I don't want to dilute the 12-year from 86 down even further personally, because I love the flavor profile of it. And I think the proof is right spot on, but that's my palate. I'm not, I'm not you and you're not me.
Yeah, that's kind of, my experience, the 12-year, if you add water, it changes it in a negative way, where, the 10-year, it changes it in a fine way. It's not better or worse. It just kind of like makes it different and good as well. So,
you don't have to use ice cubes to cool it down and or to add that much water to it. Even if you actually take 10-year, you take any of the whiskey side by side, leave the naked whiskey, and then obviously just add a couple drops of deionized water. A couple drops completely changes the complexity of the whiskey. So it's not to really water it down. It's just to open up the viscosity of the whiskey itself and let those true flavors actually start to implode.
I mean, when you have high proof age statement whiskey with a high rye mash bill, it's meant to be played with in my mind. I don't care if it's our whiskey or anybody's. When it's high proof, I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. Like a lot of people talk about Boss Hog in the first release. It was 12 years and 3/4, right? And it was super, super high proof. And people are like, oh, I can't drink it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't sit and shoot it either. But what I like to do is sit down with a glass of it with some droppers. And man, you take a couple sips, drop, right? Swirl, couple sips, drop. I mean, it is just exploding in flavor. And it's so much fun because when you start with something that's like 134.6, you got a lot of room to play, right? So it makes it just an interesting experience. And once again, yeah, like Doug said, you don't necessarily need to chill it. You just need to dilute it a little bit. And what you're going to do is all those conjures, all those oils that were in those barrels are just going to start to release and interact. It's kind of like, allowing a whiskey to sit and breathe, just like you would a wine glass, let it oxidize a little bit. I mean, that whether it's distilled or not, I used to always joke because I sold wine for 15 years, is like, those grapes haven't seen air in like, long time. So you're going to pull that cork and they're going to go through their phases. Well, not the same exact thing happens with whiskey, but at the same time, you do want some air to it. And if you go back to a bottling, like I have some of the Boss Hog 2 over here, if you were to pull the cork out of a brand new, like sealed bottle of Boss Hog 2, and then taste one that I've had open for 5 years, you're going to taste differences. And it's not the proof. It's not that they're different barrels, because they probably would be, but it's literally going to be that air has been hitting that whiskey. It's touched that whiskey, right? And I've depleted some. And every time you open it up, new air enters and things change. So it doesn't take the luster away per se, especially when it's 118.8 proof, right? Which is the one I have over there. But, other questions? I'm just going to touch upon 15, 18 Boss Hog and Farm Stock just because we're here, right? But after 10-year, after 12-year, there was 15-year. And 15-year is really the bold, where 12-year soft, elegant. I feel like 15's the, I love 10-year. I want more age. I want more character, chewy, in your face, and complexity. So it's a minimum 15-year aged whiskey. It's finished in our Vermont oak, right? With a heavy number 4 char, with a custom toast from ISC, Dave being Dave, knowing them, and said, I want toasted heads. I want a different, vanillins coming out of our Vermont oak. And keep in mind, when talking about the oak, Vermont oak is going to be very much alongside French oak, as opposed to the regular American oak that you normally see for winemaking and for whiskey or any other aged spirit. And the reason being is because the grow season is so much shorter in Vermont, right? Like I said before, we've got a ton of trees in Vermont. 4% are white oak trees. So the grow season being shorter means the rings are going to be tighter, means that the vanillins and the sugars and everything, it's going to be more like French oak than it is going to be like American oak. So it's going to throw a completely different flavor profile. But when you get that heavy number 4 char and finish it like we do, you bottle it 92 proof. It's a sit by the fire. Let's have a cigar. I feel like I always need food when I drink 15-year, personally, right? You'll always see it with the blue label, the pewter topper on top, which is made at Danforth Pewter, just like our Boss Hog releases have the Danforth pewter tops. So once again, we're trying to tie as much into Vermont as we possibly can and bring more money back to the economy here locally. I say here locally because I'm there, right? But the moving onward, so we still have more time for Q&A. 18 year we launched last year. It's really to kind of go after the Scotch drinkers because it is a super unique, different whiskey that we launched. And I always joke that I try to sit down with every release and get to know it. I got to know this one really well, really fast. I've got an empty bottle over here. But at the end of the day, it's a 79% straight rye. It's an 18-year whiskey, 79% straight rye. It is 16% malted rye and then 6% malted barley. So you've literally got two different malted, you got malted barley, malted rye, which is really so very incredibly unique when you look at the rye category as a whole. And for the record, this is not like the 12-year where we finish these in Sauternes, Madeira, and Port individually and then blend them and marry them together. This is literally put into the barrel at these percentages and aged for 18 years. So a lot of these flavors just continue to merge. Bottled at 92 proof, comes in a beautiful box, glass topper, like with the pewter toppers for the 15 and the Boss Hog. We have literally a glass topper from AO Glass that is based in Vermont as well, that is doing the toppers. And I know that we're going to be expanding into other glass providers and other Vermont-based companies as we move along and continue to expand our portfolio, right? So the last one is farm stock. I can kind of hit upon this rather quickly so we continue to leave as much time as possible for more Q&A. But think of it this way, like I said before, it was always steeped in being a grain bottled distillery. And when we really started getting going, we found out that, you know, people in Vermont want you to come to Vermont with your money and not come to Vermont to make your money. So there was a lot of fiery hoops that we ended up having to jump through. And it took a lot longer fighting with the neighbors that their blueberries were going to grow to make sure that we got our distillery up and running. But the rye grown on our farm had been harvested year after year after year, waiting for our distillery to be finished. And what you have with the farm stock is rye grown on our property, aged in oak, or rye grown on our property, distilled on our property, aged in oak from the area and our farm, and then like every other whiskey that we release, diluted with water from our farm as well. So we call it our triple terroir. The first release had 20% of 1 year juice that was actually our distillate. From there, went up to 32, and it was 2 years old. And the current release that you should still have in market, and I'm looking for Doug Nixon to start nodding and said, yes, it's still in market, is the Farm Stock Rye Crop 003. And it is 3 year juice at 52%, because why would you do 51 if that's the minimum? We do 52, right? So it has other components within it. You will see on the back of every farm stock and home stock and any stock label that you see on any shelf, the transparencies on the back. There you go, Derek. You can flip that over for me. That is rice. That is number 3 that's in market right now. So you'll see the breakdowns of what percentage, where it's from, the age of it, and so on and so forth, and also what barrel it was used. So it says Vermont barrel right there. So that is always going to be what we'll be looking at to create the grain to glass portion and push the innovation once again. And we came out with home stock this year in the middle of a pandemic. We said, okay, well, we're a young, vibrant company. We can do stuff like this. And it's the first time I've said it tonight, so I'll say it. Pivot. We pivoted on doing a next release of farm stock, and it's home stock. And so it was literally 1,000 kits that went out via Flaviar, one of our e-commerce partners. And it had a barley, wheat, and rye in a kit with a graduated cylinder, almost like a bespoke kit if you were to make your own 12-year blend. And people got to play Master Blender at home and then send in what they thought was their favorite one. And then we had a live stream with about 2,500, almost 3,000 people at one point on there, and all got to vote on 3 final blends. And it came up with what is now the home stock. So we crowdsourced actually the blend, and it's only 45% rye, and the rest is barley and wheat, which is really cool, really unique. It is a limited time offering. If you see it out and about, what's in market, and this I don't need Doug to nod his head yes or no. What is in market is in market, and when it's gone, it's gone. There will be more Farm Stock 003 coming out, but at the end of the day, it's a limited release that's really, really special and cool and fun when you really think about if you're a collector and you like to put stuff off to the side, like I know Derek's got a lot of bottles he hadn't even opened behind him. So something to keep an eye out for. But I think we got plenty of time. If there's more questions, I hopefully have answers.
I have another question. You were saying at the beginning that Dave really saw the direction of the spirits industry and where it was heading. What do you think the next trend is in whiskey?
American whiskey or just whiskey in general?
I think just whiskey in general. Obviously, we're like at the height of the boom. You know, it still has some momentum. Probably still growing. Obviously, I don't know the numbers like you guys do. So I'm just curious of what your thoughts are, the trend within whiskey or within spirits in general. I know Derek and I have had these conversations a lot the past few months, just, you know, as we see the trends happen. So yeah, I'm just curious of what your thoughts are on it and what maybe Doug and your other team think.
So I'll tell you this, first and foremost, most of the time, like I was saying before, whiskey finally overtook vodka sales for the first time like 2-3 years ago. And these trends normally last 20 to 25 years. So we finally hit there, but I mean, there's so many people still finding their way to the categories, finding their ways to new brands, exploring what's out there and on a whiskey shelf at the retailer. So I feel like we're maybe a quarter of the way through this trend, if not less than that. But at the same time, there's still a lot of growth, right? So in the American whiskey, I feel like rye is just going to continue to drive so much because there's still so many people that, you know, if you look at all these private groups, which we love to interact with, a lot of them are not named like you guys in the Whiskey Society. It's called a Bourbon Society or Bourbon Group. So much is still bourbon based. Everybody just talks bourbon, bourbon, bourbon. People get in line at retailers for bourbon releases and allocated bourbons. So rye still has so much runway, right? Which is cool, which is great, because at the end of the day, that's why we're talking about Piggyback and 10-year and all the other things of what makes WhistlePig us, right? But I think in the big picture, with regards to the world of spirits, and I could talk for an hour, you kind of semi-cracked open Pandora's box with this, but I'll keep it short. I think that brandy's going to come back in a huge way because that's brown spirits and it's got a little bit of sweetness to it, and people are really looking that way. And it really was the first, you know, technically, rotten fruit turned into apple brandy, whatever you want to call it. That's how we learned about fermentation. But the cognacs of the world, the people are just going to explore as far and wide as they can brown spirits. And I can be honest that I drink a fair amount of rum. I think that aged rum from Martinique and a lot of other great areas of the world that just do small batch stuff from tiny pot stills and volcanic soils are incredibly rad. And, truth be told, and I know this will end up on YouTube and I might get in trouble for it, but you asked the question, I got my little sidecar mezcal right here. I think that there's so much to explore with regards to the agave spirit, and we're probably going to drink ourselves out of it, which is kind of, I don't know, scary and fun at the same time. But there's so much that what's going to be the new trend. We could sit around, like I'm sure you and Derek do all the time, and talk about what we think is going to be next, right? But we've seen the flavoring whiskeys, we've seen this, we've seen that, and those are going to continue. I mean, I still read all the industry stuff on a day-to-day basis, and what Screwball did last year blows my mind. And I know I was going to get a nod out of Doug on that one because they've done a great job with it in Missouri. But those are kind of things that I mean, there's so many different avenues and different ways, and people are exploring for the first time, right? I remember literally 7 years ago, there were so many people that were like, no, this is what I drink, right? I don't drink rye. Rye doesn't appeal to me. And I haven't heard those words in a long time. And that's what makes me excited, because people have opened up their minds to saying, I want to try that. I want to be introduced to something new. Give me something cool. Give me something fun. And that's the world we live in. And that's what excites me. So with that being said, I don't know if we can sit here and peg what exactly is going to be the next rising star. But right now, we're riding a three-headed monster when it comes to craft, right? Whiskey and rye within that category. And I mean, let's be real. On the big picture, we're still a small family owned. I own probably 0.01% of the company, and we're still not even 100,000 case altogether with everything we do. They still probably 100,000 cases in Texas, my backyard, of Tito's a month. I mean, like it's stupid numbers, right? So we're still a very, very, very small player on a big, big wheel, right?
Well, I tell you what, on our side, we talk about the crossover, and it's a huge part of our industry is about the education, and it's the millennials now, and and what the alcoholic seltzer business has done, and what Truly has done, and what all those have done. We have a jaunting effort that we've got to figure out how to educate, and that's why things like this, especially Zoom calls like this, is extremely important to us, not just to the general public, but to millennials and the younger generation that's coming up right now. Obviously, we talk about one about responsibility first and foremost, but then we also talk about the vast array of this industry, and Doug's right, from finishes to XO rum casks to all these other things right now that have a story. And the one thing that we have to do in our industry is for everyone is to have the lineage of what Dave Pickerell did from day one till the last day. What has he done and what did he do? And everybody wants to tell a story, and they need a story to work through the retrospective of what the product is, and really they're looking to us is how to consume it. And that's the biggest aspect on our part, and why the on-premise is such an important part of our business, and was to my life for 20 years, is if you don't know what it tastes like, you're not going to buy it. If it's a $60 glass of whiskey, you're literally not going to purchase that in an on-premise account, because you're not educated enough. And I think that, Doug's right. And in this industry, we are just looking for that next step. And we look at trends, we look at numbers, we look at Nielsen, we look at everything that scans across a cash register. And that's great, but it's events like this where we talk to consumers, and we have to take back the feedback of what's working and what isn't working. But I think that each individual brand has to have a story. How did Raj Baca and Dave Pickerell have a cocktail one night? How did I corner Dave Pickerell at the Whiskey Fest in Chicago in 2014 and say, hey, you know what, you may not have Missouri on your radar, but you might, because we really want to do some crazy stuff with you, and John's starting to see exactly what we're doing here. And it's such a fun time for us. Everyone is extremely challenged with COVID and what's happened. And we all understand that. And, everyone's looking for that one escape. And that is this industry, because when you see a lot of people come together as one and have conversations, because I think everybody's done with having a conversation about COVID. Everyone's done having that conversation about politics. It's okay, what's that next level for us is to kind of have the escape, and it's either your kids or your dogs or whiskey. And that's why we're here. And so I applaud everybody for being here tonight. This has been a part of my life for half my life for the last 26 years. And we see it as such an opportunity to not only for you to enjoy the whiskey or to enjoy our products, but also just learn the story and be able to sit around on your deck or with friends and pull out a bottle of whiskey. Because I can remember back in 1990 when I couldn't give away a bottle of Jim Beam. And now just the craziness and how this whole thing has escalated, it's been a fun ride for us. So WhistlePig is an anomaly. It has been such a true pleasure for us as a distributor, but also just me on the journey of the Legal Left Fine Pig, when we're sitting there, when you get a chance to have a cocktail with other distributors or other people around the world, and that you can find something that everyone has in common. And one thing that everyone really, LDA to whatever age group you are, one thing that you can have in common is over a cocktail, over a glass of whiskey, over a glass of wine, over a vodka and tonic, whatever it is, responsibly. But That's just what this industry has done. And the trends are, there's just more growth than we could ever imagine. You know, they still state that in the state of Kentucky that there are more barrels of whiskey that are laid down right now than human beings. That is mind-boggling. So what you're starting to see is the whiskeys, the prices are starting to go up a little bit. And it doesn't mean that the most expensive whiskey is the one that's the best. It's the one that you taste, that you that you mix with a little bit of Dr. Pepper. But if you're sitting at home or you're sitting on your deck or you're sitting anywhere in this world and you're enjoying it, we've done our job. You know, we've all done our job. And if you can get up the next day and enjoy your day, then more power to you. So that's my story.
Man, you were supposed to be in charge of doing this toast at the end. You just did it right now.
No, I can. Oh, no. I got the toast. I got the toast, baby. I'm still here.
One thing I want to, for the toast, if that's all right. I want to always mention to support local restaurants. You know, that's huge. We miss our restaurant for sure. But I think the one good thing that's going to come out of this is something like this, and to create, you know, a tasting that's not just at Gamblin Whiskey House in the barrel room. We miss that. But maybe we can do something that's online and in person eventually, which can bring, you know, people that are in Texas or wherever, Chicago, together and do a tasting that's in person and virtual. And I think that, you know, eventually we're going to get to that point. We're excited to, you know, introduce new projects here coming soon. Excited to get a liquor license for the Missouri Whiskey Society, right, Elizabeth? And I think that once we get that, we really want to, you know, partner with you guys. We appreciate you. We want to do another single barrel or another pick or two or three in the coming year. You know, 2021 is going to be awesome. And we're really looking forward to working with you guys. So thank you so much.
Well, I'll tell you what this business has done and what just the industry in general. You meet a lot of people and you create these incredible relationships that, you know, I mean, Derek, you and I 20 years ago at the Dome or J-Bot. I mean, all those years, I mean, support all of your local restaurants because, you know, obviously it is extremely challenging and we see it every single day. And as you guys have also. So to Derek and Elizabeth and Amy, Major Brands, Doug Nixon, behind you 1,000,000% on what you guys are doing moving forward. So to that, you have my commitment.
Appreciate it.
Wow. There were a couple other questions that were posted, so I just want to hit on those really quick. Ken asked, what is the minimum proof you recommend for cocktails?
I mean, my biased opinion is 96.56, but you know, I really feel like the higher proof, the more it's going to stand up in a cocktail. So maybe that's once again going to your palate, and do you really like 10-year at 100 proof and the extra layer of depth, or do you like it a little bit more rye spice heavy with a little less age and have a 96.56 proof? And then there are people 86 proof and farm stock, and it's so soft and floral and youthful that they love that, right? So you know, it really kind of depends on your palate, but we as rye whiskey, high mash bill, high proof producers with age statements, we think that the higher the proof, the more it's going to deliver into your cocktail, and maybe it's just less that needs to be used in that cocktail. So instead of, you know, using an 80 proof whiskey and using 2 ounces of it, well, 96.56 and 6-year age, you can use 1.5 ounces or 1.25 ounces, right? And that's part of the thing when we're talking, once again, and we're going to get off on a tangent, but I won't do that. When bars and restaurants are looking at the cost of their cocktails, Piggyback adds into that where it's 100% rye, age statement, and high proof. You can use 1.25 instead of what you might use for a different one at 2 ounces. And the cost of that cocktail is much cheaper, and the value gets passed along to you as a consumer at the bar, right? So at home, it's completely up to you. At a bar, we'd love for it to be a Piggyback cocktail based on the fact that they can modify what percentage of actual Piggyback and or any of our whiskeys in our portfolio are used for that cocktail.
I think that's a great answer. And the other piece of advice I'd like to give is experiment. You know, you're gonna discover that certain type of cocktails and flavorings that you have in that cocktail are gonna change based on that base spirit. And so it's up to your palate on what you're gonna enjoy. If you're gonna like a rye in one particular cocktail, or you're gonna like a softer bourbon in another. So and there's nothing wrong with having fun and experimenting. So the other question here is from Brad. This one is for Doug Nixon. It would be great if there was a rye in the daily drinker price tier. Is there any feasibility for a less than $30 bottle of rye? Doug, are you familiar with that price point in the rye category with major brands?
You know, there is. You know, your best bet is to go to your local retailer and actually go to the rye whiskey section. We sell quite a few different ones from Templeton 4-year, which is usually about $34.99, which is the true, you know, classic on that side. But there are some that are affordable. You know, go to your local retailer. You know, if it's you know, if it's Lucas or Randall's or One and Cheese Place or any of those places, and have that conversation with them, because they can really direct you towards, you know, those price points. Yeah.
All right, I think that's all the questions that were on there. If anybody has any final questions, go ahead and unmute yourself. We are going to, feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me. We're going to go into the select bottle raffle right now. And what I need is out of number 1 through 26, we're going to start with Doug Ward. Doug Ward, pick a number 1 through 26. And that's going to be for the bottle of WhistlePig.
Hold on, I'm getting my the lotto balls going over here. 24.
24. All right. And Doug Nixon, you can't pick 24, but any other number between 1 and 26.
8.
8. Okay. So our winners are, sorry, I have to go to my spreadsheet. Number 24 is Mike Stobin, which I don't think he's on right now. And number 8 is William Day, which I don't think he is on either. So I will be contacting them tomorrow that they are the winners of our bottle raffles. If you are not a member of the Missouri Whiskey Society Select level, please sign up. It's only $15 a month and you are entered into a whiskey raffle. So thank you guys. And we would love to close out with a toast. So Doug Nixon, did you say you had one for us?
I do. Okay, so if my Irish accent from my grandfather comes out, I apologize. Everybody, if you can get ready and raise a glass. I see a lot of glasses coming. Okay. So first and foremost, thank you, Elizabeth and Derek and Amy. Thank you guys for having us. Doug, thank you. And Johnny, thank you guys for being a part of this. Couldn't have been a better, you know, end of Tuesday night. I just like to see the Tampa Bay Rays beat the Dodgers tonight. So I'm just saying, yeah. So to all of you, when we drink, we get drunk. When we get drunk, we fall fast asleep. When we fall fast asleep, we commit no sins. When we commit no sins, we go to heaven. So let's all drink WhistlePig. Let's all get drunk and let's all go to heaven. Cheers to all of you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's good.
Cheers to Wednesday, Doug, by the way.
Right.
That's my favorite part of the whole toast.
Yeah.
Rays are winning 1-0.
Yeah.
Oh, you ruined it. I paused the game.
Oh.
Hey, speaking of baseball, because Nixon brought it up, all right, I have to say one thing.